So now we are going to hear from our president and founder, Greg Halliday, and he is going to share some more about NeuroIM and share us a couple, maybe perhaps 10 facts for 10 different mushrooms that we have in our formula. Greg, would you take it away, please?
You bet, Valerie. I love to share one thing about each mushroom because, yes, there are many things about each mushroom that have been recorded in studies and shared. And a good part of why we are here at Solle is to pass along everything that we learn, right? We want everyone else to have the same information we have. That's how we lift each other. So I'm not going to share screen, but I am going to stare a little. So apologize for my stare and share. But I have my notes. And I hope that what I share tonight can be something that might be just the thing that someone needs to hear for either for themselves or for someone else. Because what I'm doing is I'm looking at the training here, and there are, like I say, just in this training on the 10 mushrooms that are part of NeuroIM, there are 7 or 8 major points of emphasis. And I have the tough decision of just picking one for you in the interest of time from each mushroom. So I'm going to do that. But before I say the first one, can I just throw a reminder out? When we launched this product in the fall of 2019, Dr. Allison Caldwell-Andrews, our chief scientific advisor, she gave a presentation. And you remember she talked about how mushrooms are the fruiting body, and that what shoots out beneath them are like little branches that are called hyphae, Hyphae, I think, if I'm pronouncing them right. And that these little branches, kind of like their root system, you could call them, are part of what's called a mycelium. Mycelium, this whole network of branches, can be very large. In other words, one interconnected mycelium can be hundreds of acres, they've proven, or even greater. Why is that important? Because plants absorb nutrients where they stand. They pull them up from the earth, they get minerals, they get these wonderful components that make a difference, like in Darcy's dad. And the thing about mycelium is they've shown that, like, in woods, one of the large ones, I think it was in Oregon, one of the trees got bugs in one end, and all of a sudden they measured in the mycelium of mushrooms high concentrations of certain anti-bug nutrients or compounds that were much higher in that area where the trees had bugs in this mycelium of mushrooms versus in other parts. So what I'm trying to say is, think of the access that mushrooms in so many varieties have to pull from expanses and different vast sections of nature where all these wonderful nutrients exist. This is the reason, it's one reason to me, one sort of testimony as to why mushrooms are so nutritious and can make such a difference. So that being said, 10 mushrooms in NeuroIM, we call them 10 medicinal. There's a book that Dr. Allison wrote called 10 Medicinal Mushrooms. If you haven't heard it, it's a fun read, an easy read, and it gives you everything succinctly. So this is what I'm pulling this information from, her book. Number 1, lion's mane, a mushroom that kind of falls down like the mane of a lion and is the number 1 ingredient in NeuroIM. And why is it? Here's one fact about lion's mane. It helps nerve cells repair themselves and communicate with other nerve cells. So nerve cell reparations. And in fact, one of the studies to do with this was on the brain in a Parkinson's situation. So that's your one fact for lion's mane. The next one is a mushroom called Messima. I hope I'm pronouncing it right. It's probably Americanized. Why is Messima? What does it do that is so amazing? Well, I'm going to give you just 1 point. In one study, the gut was protected from damages caused by NSAIDs. So these common pain relievers that damage the gut, people that took Messima in their diet did not have the damage. Now that's what was measured. Think about the rest of your body and protection. Okay, so that's That's my Messima fact. Next one is turkey tail. As you can imagine, it's a mushroom that kind of looks like the tail of a turkey. What is so amazing about turkey tail? Well, let's see. Here's one point, a summary of several studies used in situations of chronic inflammation of the liver, infections to the lungs, urinary infections, digestive tract, a number of various digestive tract infections. So turkey tail providing nutrition that the body uses then to neutralize a number of, I would say, tough, stubborn varieties of infections. Shiitake is the next one. Shiitake has a substance, I won't try to pronounce it, that is very antiviral. Not only are a number of viruses inhibited because of that substance in shiitake, but also bacteria and parasitic infections. So really a general broad antimicrobial. So there's a fun fact about shiitake. The next one is chaga. I think this is our fifth mushroom. An odd shape can have a lot of different shapes. As I understand, they grow on trees, and you can kind of think it's like a stump or a knot from a tree if you don't know what chaga looks like. What are some of the wonderful points about chaga? Well, I think I mentioned this one a couple of months ago. I'm going to say it again. It promotes hair growth. So there's a fun fact about chaga. That's an easy thing to say, hair growth, but it involves obviously several different things and can be kind of complex. So chaga can make a difference in changing at the root level what is involved in hair growth. Okay, something I'm obviously interested in. Maitake. Okay, here's a fun fact about maitake. This is one of several mushrooms in NeuroIM that are known to lower or reduce heavy metal levels that you can measure in liver, kidneys, blood. So in particular, this study had to do with mercury, but there are several heavy metals that are all too prevalent in our society that with these mushrooms, body's able to rid itself of these heavy metals. I'll just give you personal opinion. I think Valerie would probably agree with me. Heavy metals absolutely have a direct impact on our cognitive and brain function, cognitive abilities. Next mushroom is, to me, one of the prettiest. It comes in all sorts of shades from light brown to like almost translucent white. It's called tremella. Tremella is another one. I think that I am going to use the fun fact that is related to lion's mane that I mentioned earlier. Tremella gives the body nutrients it needs to stimulate the growth of neurites and protect brain neurons in the cases of cognitive challenges, like, for instance, Alzheimer's. So it supports the body in that function and that defense through neurite growth, through nerve growth. Okay, reishi. Red reishi is the variety that we use in the Solle formula. And I think the fun fact I'm going to tell you about reishi tonight has to do with healing ulcers, gastric ulcers, and restoring the mucous membrane, that protective membrane that we have throughout the stomach and digestive system. To me, when I think of that, I think of all the chemicals and let's call them toxins that are in processed foods, what we drink, what we eat. When we have a healthy protective layer, this mucus layer in lungs and digestion, etc., things that aren't supposed to get in don't get in. They get processed out. Things that are supposed to transfer through the mucus layer do transfer with a healthy mucus. So red reishi, one of the many things that it does, it actually, and it's not known for as much, is heal ulcer situations there and restoring that mucus layer. Next one is a Brazilian mushroom. probably doesn't grow in Brazil. We're down to our last two. This is mushroom number 9, Agaricus blazei. Probably not pronouncing that right either. And I think what I want to tell you on that one is it is protective, and one study showed, of the major nerve center in the gut. I think that's the enteric nerve system, right, Valerie? And I've heard lately lots of talk. We were reminded by Dr. Allison in one of her studies that communication that goes on from gut to brain, which is constant and numerous, huge amount of communication, 80% of it is generated from the gut, sent up to the brain, not vice versa. So anything that protects those nerves is going to make a huge difference in clarity of mind and in so many functions. That's Agaricus blazei, one of the studies there. And last one is cordyceps. Cordyceps, I guess the one that I want to share with you today, it does so many different things, but one of the things that it is known for is a direct, I guess I'll say it this way, it's kind of a heart-lung mushroom to me. A direct difference in healthy oxygen levels into the blood, which is directly related to how strong our heart is. And so some of the studies that Dr. Allison highlighted for us had to do with heart and lungs. And I personally started using cordyceps many years ago as one of the reasons we made sure it was part of NeuroIM, because that's where I had weaknesses, lungs and asthma. And I used over-the-counter, what's now not even available over the counter. They've taken them away, and they now make you have a prescription for what I used to use, and you could buy over the counter, which would cause heart palpitations and heart issues with me. But it was something I did because of the asthma attacks. Cordyceps is something that I began using because of my imbalances, health imbalances there for many years. And I've seen a huge difference. It's part of a broader program that I take. And so NeuroIM, I actually don't miss it every day either. Well, I hope those 10 fun facts got you thinking a little bit about these mushrooms. Back to you, Valerie.
Thank you, Greg. And, there's so much to say. For someone who's never personally liked mushrooms, I cannot not have this formula every day. And two thoughts I was thinking of. One was cordyceps is the mushroom I also use to completely reverse a lung condition that my grandmother had, that they'd given her 5 years to live, and she lived 11 years, she would say 89, she went to 101. And then the other is, when you're talking about heavy metals, I love that these mushrooms have this ability to work with removing heavy metals. It is so much more common in our diet and in our water than people are aware of. And for those listening, if you want a fun fact, you can look at your fingernails, and the moon, which is the white part of your nail, if right above that there's like a purplish red line, you might want to consider taking some NeuroIM, because that has to do with heavy metal toxicity. That's one of the ways it shows up. So obviously our products are amazing, but so is the Solle family.